so you're in full stack Kotlin. Here's what we're going to try and get through in the next 40 minutes. So we're going to build a server using Ktor in Kotlin. Going to do some front-end coding using Kotlin JS, using Kotlin XHTML to generate some HTML. It's an Android conference, so I guess we should probably build an Android app. And then we're also going to use Kotlin native to do a small little native app. We're going to do all that using what you're probably familiar with, Gradle, and then we're going to convert that Gradle to a Kotlin build system called Kobalt. You guys ready? Yeah. All right. Quickly, a little bit about me. I currently work at Vimeo as an Android developer. I run the New York City Kotlin meetup. We're always looking for speakers, so if you have something you want to present on in Kotlin, please come talk to me afterwards. I got started in Kotlin. I do tech editing in my spare time for a publisher called Manning, and this book came across their desk, and they asked me if I wanted to tech proof it. So as I was doing that, we had the opportunity to convert some of our code to Kotlin at my old job. You know, usual story, started with unit tests, then went to some of the utility code, and by the time I left there, we were at about 60% of the code base was written in Kotlin. Doing the same thing in Vimeo. Anything new we write is in Kotlin. So what are we actually building? So I have 2 t-shirts, a backpack, and a copy of this book to give away. So what we're going to try and build is a little system where you can submit your name using a form, save those entries, submit it either from a website, a mobile app, front-end show anybody who's submitted their name, and then we're going to use Kotlin native to go through the entries, pick a winner, and hopefully it actually works so we can give this stuff away. And then the Kobalt stuff. All right, so we'll start off with Ktor. So Ktor is a server-side. So you can. It's made by JetBrains. It's a server-side Kotlin framework, and this is what we're going to build in it. I should also say we have maybe like 7 minutes per component, so this is not a deep dive on any of these things. It's going to be a high-level look at all of those pieces. We just don't have time to get into the nitty-gritty. If you want the nitty-gritty, please come out to any of the New York City Kotlin meetups where we do the deep dives on this sort of stuff. So with Ktor, this is what we're going to build. So we're going to have just the root endpoint that's going to give you a form. It takes name, email, address, phone number. You can post to /form, and it's going to save that data. We're going to make a REST endpoint that the web app is going to use. So you submit the same idea, but in a JSON blob. A /all endpoint that the front end is going to use to get all of the entries. /list is going to redirect us to our front end module, which is the Kotlin JS stuff. And then we're going to need a dump to generate a file with all the data, and that's going to be used by the native components. So first of all, we need a little bit of setup. So this is just, this should be familiar to you. We're going to make a brand new project, file new project, make it a Kotlin project. For lack of a better name, I called my project. Usual Gradle setup. We're going to use the default Gradle wrapper. And this is my ugly mix of Kotlin and screenshots. So for each of server, front end, native, and shared, for each of those, we're going to just create a new module, make it a new Gradle module. For server, you're going to pick Kotlin Java. For front end, you're going to do Kotlin JavaScript. Just name it the right thing. All right. So that's already done. So after that, you'll have this set up here, right? So you have a project with all these different modules in it, one for front end, one for native, one for server, and one for shared. That's going to be code that can be shared between all of them. All right, so back to Ktor. So we're actually going to look at some code here. All right, so let's start with the build.gradle file. Is that good at the back? Yeah, cool. All right. So I guess quick show of hands. Who's done Kotlin in Android before in this room? All right, most of you. Cool. So this should look familiar. So this is like a very Normal looking build file. We have some variables at the top that are going to use for different versions. We have our usual Gradle plugin for Kotlin. We apply the Gradle-Kotlin plugin. Now here's where things maybe differ just a touch. So we have to add a repository for Ktor itself, and Ktor uses coroutines, so we need the Kotlin X stuff. So as far as dependencies, we have standard Kotlin, and then we have Ktor core and Ktor Netty, which is a server, and I'll get into more about that in a second. Like I said, we're going to generate some HTML, so we're going to have the Kotlin X HTML plugin, the JVM version, and Ktor relies on logback, so we got that. Then we're going to include our shared module. Just to get rid of some compiler warnings, we say, yeah, we know we're using coroutines, and that is it. So let me quickly show what's in shared, just so we are on the same page there. So shared just has models.kt, and this just contains a person data class. So the only thing to note here, name is required, email address or not. They're nullable strings, and I'm using JSON's serialized name to change from snake case to camel case. Cool. All right. So now let's look at the server code itself. I also have this store. So this should be a data store. Really, I'm just throwing things into an in-memory mutable list. So there's no actual database. Just a quick place to save things for this demo. All right, here is Ktor. Oh, that is not Ktor. That is Kotlin native. This is Ktor. All right, let me collapse everything. All right. So I have a main function. When I run it, I create a new server variable, and I call start on it. So server calls this Ktor function embedded server, and this is where Netty comes in. So you give it what kind of server you want to run under. It supports Netty. There's a Tomcat version. There's a Jetty version. There's a unit test or a test version that doesn't actually have to spin up a server, and there's some other ones too. Yeah, so this is how. So when you start this, your thread's going to pause, wait for data coming in on port 8080. It supports different sort of plugins. Routing comes by default, and this is what routing looks like. So these look pretty familiar. You have gets and posts, you could have puts, etc. This static one is going to be for our slash. So this is how we're going to get to our that form. So this is what this looks like. So just says in the resource package HTML, point at this file. It's pretty easy. When you create a new project, you have this resources folder created for you automatically. So I've created HTML, and here's form. This form is just a simple form, and it submits to /form. All right, so here is where we're going to get the data that's posted back. So within this routing context, you have access to a call object, and it has these various receive methods, and these are what they look like. So you can receive text, channel, a stream, multi-part. We're using receive parameters to get all the parameters that get sent in from the form. Receive text, we're going to use in a minute for to get a JSON, the blob of JSON that comes in as text. So we only require a name, so if it's null, we're just going to, here you should probably show an error message or something. We're just going to redirect back to slash. So provided we get past that, we're going to make a new person object from our shared module. We know name is available, so we'll double bang that, and then these two could be null. That's fine. Add it to our data store and redirect to /list, which, like I said, is going to be our front-end module. So we have three things here. We're showing a form, it's submitting data, it's being stored, and then we're redirecting. Everybody with me? Cool. Here's how we make a little REST endpoint to get back data. So again, we're going to use this receive text. And I made a quick little extension function on JSON, just like an inline extension on JSON that has reified type T, so that we can do this instead of have the : class.java stuff. So this is parsing our JSON stream to a person object. As long as a person comes out the other side, we're going to store it and then just send like an OK 200 response back to the client. So before we go any further, let's actually run this and see those little pieces in action. So I'll click run. All right, so my server started up. And all right, so here is the form. If I submit something, cool. So and let's try out the that REST endpoint. So I think I have this in history. Yeah. So I'll just do a curl command to this /info, which is my REST post endpoint. I got an OK. Come back here. Refresh. Sweet. All right. Cool. And then the last REST endpoint we have is this all. So here we want to dump everything from our data stores JSON. Super easy. Just call respond and get JSON to convert everything in our cache to a JSON object. So that would look like so. All right. So, we have a pretty good start to a little system here, and it didn't actually take that much code. The one thing I'd advise against, there's probably too much stuff in each one of these. You should break it apart in a real app, right? Otherwise, you're going to have this gigantic, massive controller, which is bad design. But for the most part, a little bit of code, we can get a lot done. So this is Ktor. We'll get into list for the front end stuff in a second. The one thing I'll point out first too is I have this other static context that points to the front end module to the web folder. So now I can do /js and get to any JavaScript files in my front end module. So that'll be important in a second. All right, come back here. Where's my presentation? It is. All right. So yeah, Ktor itself is split into these different modules that you can import. Like I said, here's all the server ones. It does have things for auth, HTML templates, WebSockets, etc., etc. The one thing that I'll say is not good with Ktor is this. So here's Ktor's website. When you get started with it, it's like, oh, cool, right? There's a get where to begin. It walks you through things. It seems pretty easy. And you're like, all right, sweet. I'm going to get started. I'm going to build an application. All right, that's cool. I'll configure it. Oh, that's empty. Oh, that's weird. All right, well, features. Sessions are important. Oh, that's empty. Okay, well, maybe I'll authenticate. Nope, can't do that. So they have a long way to come on their documentation. Their samples are very good, but unless you actually want to go dig through samples and figure out how they work, yeah, they have a long way to come on their docs. Some of these are filled out. Oh, no, not that one. Or that one. Or, yeah, routing. There you go. So I'd say maybe half of these have stuff in them, maybe a little less. So that's one big downside is, docs are lacking. All right. Some other server-side options, if you're interested in researching any of these, Spring Boot. Is Yusuf in here? He's at the back. He did a talk for us at the New York Kotlin meetup on Spring Boot. So I'll have a link to this, to my presentation, and if you want to go look at his talk, it's right there. Javelin and Spark have first-class support for Kotlin. Kara is another pure Kotlin web framework, and Kotlin's now officially supported on AWS, Google Cloud Platform, and Heroku, meaning they have like a here's how to get started with Kotlin, and show a small little sample app. Your mileage may vary depending on your combination of where you host and what framework you use, but I think in the industry things are definitely going in the right direction in this space. Oh, and I put a star because really Kotlin, as you know, compiles to Java bytecode. So any framework you should be able to just do Kotlin in and have, success. All right. So now let's look at Kotlin.js. All right. So before we look at code, here is how it works. So let's pretend you made a mystuff.kt file, has a main method that just does print line hello world. All right, so if you compile that, what you'll end up with is a mystuff.js file, a meta.js file, and a Kotlin.js and meta.js file. So the meta files you only need to include if you do anything with reflection in your actual code. Then you need to also include the JS file. Otherwise, you can ignore them. So yeah, you end up with these JS files in your HTML source. You just link to them, Kotlin first, and then your mystuff. So in this case, as soon as this is included, it would run your main function. Your print line would just go to console. So do a console.log, and you'd see hello world. So that's how Kotlin.js sort of compiles down and how you include it in your code. There's a couple important standard libs for Kotlin.js. So Kotlin browser gives you access to the document and window, which are very important. And then the Kotlin.js standard lib module itself gives you access to things like console, JSON, math, regex, a bunch of other stuff. So both of these are very important. There's also a ton of W3C components. By a ton, I'll show you what I mean. So here's all of the standard lib. If you've done stuff with Kotlin in Android, you've probably used the collections ones, right? But down at the bottom, all these ones tagged with JS. There's like W3C DOM, stuff for SVG, stuff for files. We're going to use this one here at the bottom to do like AJAX requests. So yeah, there's a lot of these things. All right. So Kotlin.js by itself doesn't give you a way to generate HTML, but the Kotlin XHTML library has a JS module. So you include that, and this is the easiest way unless you want like to append a bunch of strings with Java. Please don't do that. Yeah, so use this if you want to generate HTML code from your JavaScript. Here's their sort of default example, window unload, and then you can get the document and body, which is part of the standard library, and then you can call append div, and this is part of Kotlin XHTML. And then anything under here is just generating some HTML code. All right, so let's see this guy in action. All right, we'll start at the Gradle file again. So the first stuff, again, should look normal to you. You have your regular Kotlin Gradle plugin, but instead of applying plugin Kotlin, we're going to apply Kotlin to JS. We're going to have the Kotlin X Maven repo so that we can include the HTML.js library. And so everything else here should look familiar to you. This chunk here, I actually just copied directly from the tutorial. Essentially what happens is when it compiles, it'll make jar files for you, but this chunk of code gets the JS out of the jar files for both Kotlin and your module and any library modules and moves it over to web. So after, like when I actually hit compile, I'll end up with something that looks like this that I can actually point to and use in my code. So again, this chunk of code I didn't write. It's right from their like getting started part of their tutorial, but it is needed. All right, let's look at the code. Okay, so this looks like Kotlin. We have a main method. We're going to call this getData function that I declared down here. It takes a lambda that's going to receive a list of people for every person. We're going to append to the body, and I made an extension function on person that turns it into an HTML representation. So that's just at the bottom of this file. So it looks like this. So again, this is the Kotlin X HTML.js library. So create HTML, make a new div that has a span in it, and that span has the person's name, the email address, and the phone number, as long as they aren't null. So getData. So this is what getData looks like. So again, it takes lambda that's going to be used to display people after we get them back. But we're calling that /all endpoint to actually get a JSON dump of data. So if you've done any JavaScript work in the past, this will look familiar to you. You have this XML HTTP request object, again, used for AJAX calls. We're going to call that request. After this is defined, with it, we're going to call open and get all the data from /all and send off that request. When the data is loaded, that's when this block in here is going to fire. So as soon as we get back some text, we're going to turn it into JSON. We're going to map those JSON objects to actual person objects. We're just going to print them to the console to see what that looks like, and then we're going to call our callback. It's going to put them on the screen. So the one thing that sort of stands out here is this looks like JavaScript, right? So you still sort of have to know how that stuff works, for this to sort of make any sense. Otherwise, you have to go and look at the docs for how this thing works, right? So I'm saying some JavaScript knowledge, brings you a long way here. You can't just write. It's not just all pure Kotlin code. Yeah. So let's see what that actually generates. So that was that /list endpoint. So that was the JavaScript part. But let's go back and look at the server component that's actually including those files. So here's /list. And here I'm using, again, Kotlin X HTML to generate some HTML inline. So when you call list, we're going to respond with this text. We're going to create some HTML. It's got body, a header, div, and then here are the references to my compiled JavaScript files. So in the browser, that looks like this. All right, so I got my stuff generated. I have all my scripts that are included. And then after this script has run, it's just dumping the data for each person on the screen. All right. Cool. And again, there's a lot more there's not a lot more behind Kotlin.js, but we got to keep moving on here. Okay. How much time do we got? Let me check. We're good. All right, so an Android app. So we're going to put together a quick little Android app, which looks like this. Simple form. In that Android app, to get started, usual workflow to create a new project. In Android Studio 3, there's this new checkbox, include Kotlin support. And if you check that, it actually makes Kotlin activities and stuff for you by default in Java instead of Java, which is a nice thing to see in Android Studio. So the code looks like this. All right. So I'm using a couple of different things here. If I look at the Gradle file, the first thing, if you guys haven't seen Kotlin Android extensions, you can apply just this one plugin, Kotlin Android extensions. And then from your activities, you can just reference views as though you've already done the find view by ID on them. So if I command click on that, it brings me right here. There's no find view by ID. They're just imported as synthetic properties. Another nice little thing, a colleague I work with, Mohit, he wrote this nice little function on retrofit so that instead of calling the default in queue on a callable, you can actually do this version here, which just takes 2 lambdas, makes it feel much more sort of at home in Kotlin. And to do that, pretty easy extension. You just take the 2 callbacks that have the same method signature as the default on response and on failure. And then in the body, you just call the regular on queue and then sort of pass through the calls. So this looks nice. I also included Anko. So Anko lets you use like these builder style things to do things like create alerts and toasts. And it's got a bunch of built-in utility methods and stuff for creating views. My retrofit thing looks like this. I have this person service that I'm posting a person to. Person service is just a lazily created instance of this interface using retrofit.create. Retrofit's also a lazily implemented retrofit instance. So this could be injected, this could be in your app class, this could be a singleton, something, so you have one instance of this. So that's how that works. All right, Kotlin native. All right, do I have any? Oh yeah, so when people think Kotlin native, my first thought was, oh, this is awesome. I'll be able to like click a button and my Java application is going to be this nice little executable that I can just send to anybody and it's going to work. But that isn't the case at all. That works as long as you don't import anything. So think about how far you could get with just pure Kotlin, no imports, right? So no retrofit, no file, no math. So the thing we're building, we have to load a file and pick a random line. So think about how you do that if you couldn't do new file or math.random, right? So that like pipe dream sort of falls apart once you get into this. And you end up with code that looks a lot like C that isn't really that interoperable. What you do get is, you know, all the 1.1 language feature support, standard lib support, coroutine support, very slow footprint executable that you can actually just send to any of these systems that don't have to have a JVM on it, and they can just run it, you know, like they would any other compiled app. So that's nice. I gave a presentation at the New York Kotlin meetup that got much more deep into Kotlin native. So again, you can get this presentation and go and look at that presentation if you want, you know, much more in-depth stuff. But just a quick high level, let's look at the code. All right, so build, again, top bit looks familiar. Instead of applying Kotlin, they call the native Kotlin stuff Conan, don't know why. And we need to interop with some C libraries. So this is how you do that. So we need standard IO to do the file stuff. To seed the random stuff, you need the time stuff from C. So these interop files look like this. So some of these already exist, some of them you have to put together yourself, but you really just point at the header files, you give it some different compiler args, and then when you compile your code, it makes it so that you can just import those things from Kotlin and use them from Kotlin. Then the last piece of this file, I'm going to be building something called winner chooser, and it uses those interop files. So first chunk looks pretty familiar. This looks like regular Kotlin until you sort of get to here. So here I'm f-opening a file, which is not Kotlin, that's a C function. and Pierre. So this starts to look like a mix of Kotlin and C code, which it is. And like this is just downright ugly. Memscoped means that, again, at C you have to manage your memory. After this memscope block, it knows that anything in the block can get cleaned up. So this chunk of code is loading a file, putting each item into this list of strings, mutable list of strings. At the end, we have to, again, seed random so that random values are truly random. This is where the time thing comes in. Create a random value. I'll print off the index and then print a line from it. So what stands out here, again, just like the JS stuff, you need to know some JavaScript. Here you need to know C stuff. Otherwise, it's not like you can just write Kotlin, compile it, and everything's happy. We're running short on time, so I'm going to skip more samples here, get into Kobalt. So for Kobalt, just a brew install Kobalt, or you can install it from a zip, and then you go to whatever module you want. You do Kobalt W init, either Kotlin or Java, and it generates these files for you. They look like Gradle files, right? Looks like the Gradle version, and then you create a Kobalt source build.kt file. It supports a lot of the stuff that we're already used to in Gradle. And here's what it looks like. So I did this already for my server module. So under server, I have all these pre-built Kobalt things, and I had to create Kobalt source build. Looks sort of like Gradle, but it's a little different. So here is my shared project, and I pointed at a directory. Dependencies, just like Gradle. I'm assembling a jar, targeting 1.6. And then my server project is a project, this is nice, project that relies on shared. So it's going to compile shared first. You can add more things in here too if it relies on other modules. Same dependencies as I had in Gradle. And then I also have this application, which means if I type Kobalt W run, it's actually going to build and run that line of code. So I think that's all I got here. We're going to run this thing. You guys can submit. We're going to do the draw for this stuff. But quickly, summary, documentation for Kotlin and Android was really good. Kotlin XHTML wasn't so good. Kotlin JS is actually pretty terrible. Ktors is especially bad. Kotlin native has really good samples, not that, the documentation is meh. Kobalt is actually pretty good. What would I use personally? So if you're not already using Kotlin on Android, you should be. For server, I would absolutely use Kotlin. I'd probably steer away from Ktor, though. I'd probably use Spring Boot. From doing this, I've actually sort of fallen in love with Kobalt. It's a very nice build system, and I would definitely use it. I'd steer away from Kotlin JS because I don't see the benefit of it versus pure JavaScript. Just write JavaScript. If you want type safety, use TypeScript, right? Kotlin native, I would only use in special cases. Like I want this little executable that I can send to everybody that does something small. All right, so as long as this all worked, I should be able to go into server. I'm going to run my server. All right, so that's running. I'm going to use ngrok to just make a tunnel through to my local system. So you guys should, hopefully, fingers crossed, be able to go here. Don't bother with email and phone number. Just put in your name. I'll go to the list screen to make sure somebody hasn't put in their name twice. If you're a winner, I'll just make sure, so please don't do that. And I'll give you guys a minute, and then we will run that native app. And again, fingers crossed, hopefully it works. He can come claim his prize. And I made a thing so you won't actually see the list of people. So if you submit your name, it's hidden from people. Never mind. You can see everybody's name. All right. Yeah, I'm sure like Seymour Butts is going to win, right? All right. All right. I'll give you guys another 30 seconds, and then we're going to shut this thing down. Okay, and voting is closed, or submission is closed. All right, so now we're going to call this /dump. So I had that dump command. We didn't look at it, but it really just takes everything from cache. Oh, no. Let me start this guy back up. Let's see if I can. No. But I didn't shut down the server, so it should be okay. Should check the docs. This is, of course, live demo, right? Let me try one thing here. I'm going to make sure that I have a dump directory here. I do. I think this is my test one. That's my test one.
I have it open in my browser if you want to pick it up.
Yeah, I guess we could go to /list and just pick at random. Interesting. Give me a second. Where does this run from? Ooh. And I just shut down the server. So I think we are. Oh no. Oh, you know what happened? I think that this was still running. Yeah, so it didn't actually start up correctly because I had my other version here running. How much time do we got? We got like 3 minutes, right? Let's do this. All right, so I'm going to shut this down. I'm going to start this one back up. So let me go to code, droidCon, projects, server, Kobalt, run. Cool. I'm going to start up ngrok again. And now if somebody can submit just 1 or 2, I'm going to call dump. Okay, cool. So keep going. Now we're okay. Okay, we're going to stop it there. Let's do this. It worked. Now if I go over to my native, now if I call build, I think this is in history. All right, so I'm going to call this window chooser. I'm going to pass it a link to my dump file. First person gets the book. Second person gets backpack and t-shirt. Third person gets a t-shirt. Good? All right. Sean O'Neill, book. Come see me afterwards. Segment full. You get t-shirt and backpack. There you go. Seymour Butts gets the other t-shirt. Let's do the t-shirts again. All right. So Dennis McDonald, t-shirt and backpack, and whoever Zach is, if your name's Zach, come see me. All right. That's all I had. I'll put up a link to the slides here. If you guys want a copy of the slides, this bottom URL, droidcon-fullstack-kotlin, links to this presentation. Thank you, guys.